Hey everyone, today I wanted to take a look at some of the major developments that happened after World War II. And we've been taking a look at how World War II cast this ominous shadow over the second half of the 20th century with the Holocaust and the atomic bomb. And I wanted to take a look at how this influences a philosophical movement that picks up momentum after the war, trying to figure out what all this means. And so we're going to take a look at existentialism today and how this pertains to one of the readings I had you read this week, which was a play by Sartre, who is the leading existentialist, and he's taken a look at these ideas, and he puts together a play called No Exit that illustrates his thoughts, right? Existentialism, if you take a look at the first 5 letters, it mainly tells you what this movement is all about. So if you ever get kind of stuck on what this is, just go back to the first 5 letters, and it's mainly about existence, right? The question of who am I, why am I here, and where am I going, and seeking to answer those ideas. Here's a brief synopsis that I have about this movement. It's a philosophical movement that stems from the late 19th century and reemerges after World War II. As the name suggests, it examines the meaning of our existence. Who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? Jean-Paul Sartre, who you see below on the bottom right-hand corner, is the main existential philosopher after World War II. The Holocaust heavily influenced his philosophy. He refuted the Nazi soldiers' claims during the Nuremberg trials that they were not responsible for the Holocaust because they were merely following orders. Today we'll investigate how World War II and existentialism helped to change the rules of aesthetics in art, right? Aesthetic beauty in art. And so mainly what he takes a look at in his essay entitled Being and Nothingness, he suggests that there's a paradox of existence, right? We have this unlimited freedom to be able to do whatever we wanted, right? So if I wanted to just completely leave my family and go live in Cancun, I have the freedom, the free will to be able to do that, right? He says, on the other hand, right, I have a responsibility to my family, I have a responsibility at my job, I have a responsibility to students, I have a responsibility, within my community, within my ward, right? I have responsibilities that limit my freedom. And so although we have the unlimited freedom of choices, we also are connected to other people. And he's influenced, as I mentioned, by the Nazi soldiers during the trial that said, you know what, this is not our fault, don't blame us, we're just following orders, blame the top officials. And he says, no, that's incorrect, right? Because although they were following orders, right, they had the freedom to follow those orders or not follow them, right? And because they were immoral orders, they had a responsibility not to follow them. And furthermore, they had a responsibility to the Jewish people that they were overseeing in the concentration camps, that they were responsible for their lives. And so he suggests that we are all interconnected, right? I'm responsible to you, you're responsible to me, right? We all make the choices that interact, that interweave and intertwine, and we create this complicated network of choices and existence, right? So yes, we have the freedom to do whatever we want per se. We also need to balance that with the responsibility, right? And so another example to think about, right? In a couple weeks, you guys are going to have the first exam for this class, right? The midterm. You have the freedom to be able to, right, choose your own, to not study, or the freedom to study, right? But what he argues, what it gets down to, is that you create your own existence based on the choices that you make, right? So if you study really hard, you have the freedom and the ability to choose the grade that you get. If you don't study hard, then you have the freedom and the ability to choose that existence. But either way, we're all making choices, and we're all responsible for the choices that we make, right? He suggests also we need to balance between selfishness and sacrifice, right? So yes, we have to focus on our own survival. We have to focus on eating and, having a roof overhead. But we also have to think that we just can't purely make selfish decisions, that we have that responsibility to others, that we need to be able to think about how our decisions are affecting others. And this is perhaps something we don't think about too much, or perhaps enough, within the business world and within politics, right? It's mainly about this dog-eat-dog world where I'm trying to fulfill my own kind of existence, and therefore you're kind of left to fulfill your own existence, and winner take all, right? And he suggests that's a problem, right? We need to be able to think about how our decisions influence others. And so that's a key component to Sartre's ideas. He also says this, and this is where I think a lot of his ideas overlap with teachings within the gospel. The idea of the freedom of choice, the responsibility of others, right? Balancing selfishness versus sacrifice. I think we all kind of agree with that. This is where it starts to become a little bit more problematic for some. He suggests that existence seems meaningless because it's filled with endless questions that to them have no absolute answers. And so the questions of who am I, why am I here, where am I going, that has no absolute answer to them, right? So you have to think about these people are not having the gospel in their life, and so they don't necessarily have that aspect of truth, but they're trying the best they can to find aspects of that truth. And so he suggests, much like the Dadaists, that existence seems meaningless because there's no resolute answers to these very complex, difficult questions, right? I wanted to show you a clip that comes from that kind of summarizes the Nuremberg trial, that summarizes a lot of the ideas that are influencing his philosophical thought.
On Thursday, the 18th of October, 1945, in Berlin, the indictment was lodged with the tribunal.
Thus spoke Lord Justice Lawrence on day one of the 10-month drama now ended at Nuremberg. To answer came Goering, except for Hitler, head of the Nazi state. Now he will die, hanged by the neck like a common criminal. Lest pity be felt for him and his kind, remember, this man burned the proud cities of Britain. From the skies came death, and those who died, as here in Coventry, they do not forget. Of the accused, 12 hang, 3 go to life imprisonment, 3 from 10 to 20 years. Here is Wilhelm Keitel. This man, once a field marshal, sent German armies over Europe and Western Russia. He too will hang. But that will not wash away his crimes, nor bring back our dead. Among those sentenced was Baldo von Schirach. He will serve 20 years in prison. But the evil he implanted in the young men and women of Germany will take more than 20 years to destroy. Now the defendants know who is to die, but we speak for the millions killed because of them. The burned towns, the widows, the fatherless, and the unspeakable horrors of the murder camps. This was the work of the Führers. Let us now have done with them forever.
And so the idea that we see here, right, is you see the Nazi insignia being blown up at the end, is the responsibility, right? Are they going to be responsible? Should they be responsible for their actions? And this is a complicated kind of concept that we're starting to re-examine within the 20th century. We kind of have had this discussion within the Middle Ages, and we come back to it during the Renaissance, this idea of free will that Mirandola picks up on. He suggests that what makes humanity great is our ability to choose. And Sartre picks up on this, and he suggests, what does this mean in the aftermath of the Holocaust and the atomic bomb, right? Can we just do whatever you want during a war, or are there standards, right? Are there war crimes that we should do, right? If someone gives you an order, should you simply follow it, even though it's an immoral order, right? And we tend to look at this within the church as this idea of agency, that we all have free agency, free will, this kind of radicalized, we get to choose our own existence. And I think to some extent Sartre agrees with this, but I think he suggests also that it's a complicated issue. I think that I was having a discussion with a student a few years ago, and he suggests, well, with Sartre's understanding of this idea of radical free will, wasn't it also the Jewish individual's free will to remain in a concentration camp, right? Wasn't it their ability to choose to remain there that limited, right, or that they should be responsible for? And I don't know. I don't necessarily want to go that far. I don't think Sartre would go that far, right? If I was, for instance, if I was holding you up, right, and I said, with a gun, I said, give me all your money, and you gave it to me, and then the police arrested me, I went to trial, and they said, well, you stole money from so-and-so, and I said, no. They chose to give it to me, right? They had free will. They didn't have to give it to me. I could have shot them instead, right? But they chose to give it to me. Or let's say that you didn't give it to me and I shot you, and then now I'm on trial for murder, right? And I make the argument, well, you didn't give it to me, and I said that you should give it to me or I'm going to shoot you. That was your free will to choose to die instead, right? Would we really allow that person off the hook, right? So we do have to be cautious of, what do we do with this idea of free will? Where does the responsibility start and where does the responsibility end? Certainly if someone's holding a gun to you or putting you in a concentration camp, they now have removed a large aspect of your free will away from you, and now they have a responsibility for the choices that they're then making against you, right? So we have to be cautious within that. It's a little bit more complicated than just everyone gets to choose, right? Because we can have moments where our agency is severely limited, if not taken away, right? So I think Sartre would agree with that particular concept. So let's take a look at how existentialism relates to abstract expressionism. These are two movements that are happening almost simultaneously. They're not necessarily, it's not to say that abstract expressionism are existentialists and existentialists are abstract expressionists. They're just part of a similar discussion, responding to similar socio-historical events, right? One is an art movement, abstract expressionism is an art movement, existentialism is a philosophical movement, but they're responding to similar ideas, and so there is some overlap in this Burke's Parlor discussion that they're having. Existentialism seeks to understand the meaning of life, and as New York became the center of the art world, existentialism influenced the newly developing artistic thought. Abstract expressionism captures existentialism's lack of certainty and rejection of finding meaning through conventional means, right? So the idea that we can't necessarily turn to these past traditional means because they're flawed, because they're problematic, we need to find other methods to be able to find meaning is part of both of them, right? The initiative of both of them. Rather than looking for truth in the outer world, artists turn to self-reflection and introspection to understand the self, right? This is where Pollock and Newman are trying to understand the self. To existentialists, truth is not necessarily an end goal, right? This idea of we're going to finally arrive at truth. And we kind of have that kind of narrative within some aspects of church culture that we're going to arrive finally at truth and then we'll kind of be done, I guess. But to some extent, what existentialists argue is that it's a process of discovery, right? That it's a journey, right? Truth is a journey, not a destination. Abstract expressionists borrow these ideas. Meaning should be found in the artist's and the viewer's pursuit of truth. Right. Additionally, the rational mind creates things like genocide and atomic warfare. Thus, art should not be rational. It should find ways to awaken the irrational, emotional, spiritual forces that are within. And so they have different kind of objectives or different kind of approaches, but they have similar kind of elements that are embedded within both of them because they're both responding to the atomic bomb and the Holocaust, and so certainly there is some overlap within them. I want to take a look at Sartre's No Exit, just to introduce some ideas to you, to get you to think about what to expect from going to it. Thinking about the Middle Ages and the previous understanding of hell, we have Dante's view, and this is an illustration done by William Blake, who is an artist during the 19th century, and he did some printings on, he was influenced by Dante's Inferno, and so he started to create some images, and so I'm showing you the images that he created of Dante's Inferno. If you haven't read it, put it on your bucket list, really good. But what you have is Virgil, who is a Roman poet, showing Dante through hell, kind of a journey through hell. And it kind of feels a lot like they're going through an amusement park, just kind of going through different scenes, different circles of hell, giving them a sense of what hell is like. And the idea for this is to correct Dante, who's on the wrong path, going the wrong direction. This circle is the whirlwinds, and these are individuals that are lovers in life, that it got caught up with their passions, and so in death, they're now caught up in a whirlwind where they cannot control their body. And so they couldn't control their appetites in life. Now they cannot control their body appetites in death. And so the idea of Dante is he's suggesting that there has to be this balance, this order, this orchestration to hell. These ones are the suicides that Blake is illustrating. And so here you see Virgil pointing to Dante here about the suicides. This is what the people that took their life now they have to be punished for that. And so you have these trees. They turn into these trees where they cannot communicate except when these mythical birds called the harpies come and eat at their fruit or eat at their leaves, and causing them to bleed. And so the only ability that they have to communicate is through this inflicted harm. And so again, it's taking a look at these, the punishment, and the punishment should fit the crime, right? And these are the individuals that are the traitors, political, religious traitors in life, and now they are farthest from God's light, and so they're frozen up to their eyes in the frozen river of Cocytus and hell. Here you have Virgil and then Dante kind of taking a look. But again, the idea is that these guys rejected the light of Christ. They rejected God's warmth in life, and so now they are tortured in death, right? And then let's take a look at No Exit, how we see these ideas and what we're going to take a look at for Wednesday. Mainly what you see is a postmodern or reinterpretation of hell, right? So more of a contemporary look at this. And so he's taking a look at Dante's hell, and he kind of flips the narrative, so to speak. And so rather than there being these circles, you're mainly in a hotel, and people are struggling to find meaning within this hotel. An existential idea, right? How do we find meaning? How do we find truth? How do we find certainty, right? Estelle says, looking at the other two with a puzzled air, really, I can't imagine why they put the three of us together. It doesn't make any sense. And so you have these three individuals, Estelle, Inez, and Garcin, and they're put in a room together, and they're trying to find meaning, right? Existential questions. Why am I here, right? What's the meaning of it all? Inez says, what's that you said? I'm looking at you two and thinking that we're going to live together. It's so absurd. I expected to meet old friends or relatives. A pure fluke, I should say. They lodge folks as they can in the order of their coming. Why are you laughing? Because you amuse me with your flukes, as if they've left anything to chance. But suppose you've got to reassure yourself somehow, mere chance, that it's by chance that this room is furnished as we see it. It's an accident that the sofa is sofa on the right is a livid green, and the one on the left's wine red. Mere chance. Well, just try to shift the sofas, and you'll see the difference quick enough. And that statue on the mantelpiece, do you think it's there by accident? And what about the heat here? What about that? A short silence. I'll tell you, they've thought it all out, down to the last detail. Nothing was left to chance. The room was all set for us. And so this is the central question of No Exit, and a question I want us to talk about as we come back on Wednesday, right? How does Sartre redefine the image of hell, right? And as you answer this question, consider these thoughts, right? As you're thinking about this, do you believe that there is order to this image of hell or not, right? So who do you think is right? Do you think Inez is right, or do you think Garcin is right? Garcin says it's just all random, it's just chance that they just threw us together. And Inez says, nope, they thought it all out. There's perfect order to this. It's all about trying to inflict the most amount of pain, right? And so as they first arrive at this hotel, they keep thinking, okay, where are the torches? Where are the pinchers? Where are the pitches of boiling, oil? What are they going to dip us in? How are they going to, torment us? And there's none of that, right? There's a different type of torture. So I want you to think about how people are tortured in this version of hell, right? and it's very different from what we see with Dante. So what we see is that these traditional ideas being redefined and reimagined within the modern world, responding to these modern socio-historical political forces, and they're seeking to reevaluate the understanding of human existence to try to come to some type of make some type of sense of it. And so as you think about this, right, do you think that there is order to it as they're seeking to find meaning? And if there is order, I want you to find specific moments where we see that order, right? Are these three individuals perfectly suited to torment one another? Or are they merely there by chance, and any three people could inflict the same amount of torture as these three people? So think about that as we come to Wednesday's discussion. And then I want you to think about, what would you rather be in, right? Would you rather be in Dante's version of hell or Sartre's version of hell? And the ideal is that there's neither, but thinking about which one is more torturous, right? And why, right? And that's a question I want us to think about as we come back.